Hello, everyone. Welcome back to St. Louis Teens. Today, we are here with Ibraheem Alinur, who is the founder of City Health Tech, which produces Opal, a wireless waterproof device that educates people to wash their hands properly. Ibrahim, you are a member of the Community Leadership Corps of the Obama Foundation, and you were selected for the 25 Under 25 Social Entrepreneurs. Congratulations, and thank you for your phenomenal product promoting the health of many.
Yeah, thank you so much. Happy to be on.
Ibrahim, thank you so much for being here with us today. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what inspired you to start City Health Tech?
Yeah, so I kind of give you more background on me. I'm a first generation American, first person in my family to go to college. I grew up in the middle of nowhere outside of Orlando, Florida. So I'm coming from this from like a relatively like as far down as you can get. I mean, being born in America, you get a lot of advantages, but other than that, I think I've really bootstrapped my way to where I am today. So the reason why I got into entrepreneurship is that I've always been kind of like a hustler since I was little, sending candy out of my backpacks. I remember I would do people's homework, I was tutoring. So I've been doing that since I was 10. Money has always been kind of tight. So I've been kind of forced to hustle and to kind of sustain myself. And, kind of where I am today because I received a scholarship. I'm actually a Gates Millennium Scholar. And that helped fund me to get into Northwestern where I was paid for. And so it's kind of like how I ended up where I am today. And I ended up getting my degree recently, just this last few months. It was my degree in industrial engineering. So kind of like interesting perspective being like a college entrepreneur and what that looks like to kind of, build all these different failures. And so what got me into entrepreneurship was really understanding how many people you can actually impact. If you think about any other things, like most people will tell you be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, typical brown parents. And, my mom always wanted me to be a doctor. But what I found was I actually wanted to do research in like nanotechnology engineering. And when I looked into academia, it takes about a solid 10 to 15 years for you to really do anything that actually is going to get in front of somebody. And that's, once I realized that, I realized, when I got into college and understood how big the world was, I really wanted to focus more on entrepreneurship. So City Health Tech was kind of born from kind of an epiphany. I think most people, especially young people who are now listening to this, of thinking about where do you belong in the world and what is actually your purpose. It's sometimes very easy to say, I'm starting a company just because I want to get into this, or the many reasons to do something. But I think at the end of the day, I think about, given my skills and talent, where can I make the biggest impact? And so something that really jumped out to me was this idea of smart cities. So how do we use technology to better cities in themselves? And that's kind of how I got inspired to start City Health Tech. I knew I wanted to work kind of somewhere in city innovation, but it wasn't when I was talking to my mom, who was at the time studying to be a nurse, who talked about how nurses don't even wash their hands properly. So this doctor was sitting in front of a classroom of 50 nurses, telling them to sing the happy birthday song twice. So for most people, and I think this like kind of struck me when I was maybe like 18, that is literally what they do in the healthcare field. There is no some fancy technology to make sure people have clean hands. And I thought that was really staggering to me. And when I looked in statistics, I found that there are 1.7 million healthcare-acquired infections, about 180 million school days. This is just in the US alone are missed due to preventable disease. So as you trying to start picking things apart, and especially with COVID, you can see how we are really not built for disease prevention, especially culturally. We don't talk about, how we affect our neighbors and whatnot. And so I think that's kind of what inspired me to start this, was to understand, one, how can we get people to wash their hands and actually give actionable data? There is actually no data set on hand washing times. It doesn't exist. And so those are two very big white spaces. And I think as anybody looks out, this word white space is about finding an opportunity where things don't exist. And that's kind of like where I found, where I thought that was interesting, that data doesn't exist. All this research of 30 years telling everybody to wash their hands, but yet no one does it. So how can we make that a better enjoyable process?
And can you tell us a little bit more about the wonderful work that Opal does? And I know it can be difficult, but if you had to sort of pick one part about Opal that would be your favorite, what would that be?
Yeah, so City Health Tech as a whole, we provide I would say two different things. One is technology, the other form is education. So we work with schools across Chicago on their community health education, thinking about disease prevention and how they can prevent the spread of disease, and teach that from kindergartner all the way up to 12th grade. Having like this connected chain that's not just, oh, here's, your immune system, and then here's how you wash your hands, and here's what it looks like when you sneeze, all those things connected. So I think that's something that is part of our solution. And the second part is our technology. So you can see behind me, it's a small device. It sits next to the sink. It has a distance sensor that tracks how people wash their hands and how long they spend in front, which then triggers a series of animations. And that can be virtually anything from live news updates to student spotlights to even like, student of the month. So that's kind of what we're working with schools, is figuring out this educational content platform, as well as being able to actually get people to wash their hands implicitly. So my favorite part would just be that we're actually able to track what animation encouraged that behavior. And one of the hardest things that you'll find is getting somebody to change their behavior. And that's what gets me really excited, is that we're able to see the data of what sorts of things. Was it, a knock knock joke? Was it a story, a little bear dancing? What actually encouraged somebody to change their behavior? And on a mass scale, actually apply some AI to understand human behavior.
And can you share with us some of the success stories of the program and the people that you work with in terms of, as you talked about, schools, corporations, or individuals that City Health Tech serves and that use your device?
Yeah, I think when we first started, and for most people just getting started in entrepreneurship, it's important to understand who are the leaders in your field. So you see someone who's a Department of Energy or Education, whoever it is, figure out who are the thought leaders in that space. Because as you, as an outsider, being a young person, you will not be able to understand years and decades of knowledge, right? So I've been able to partner with like the Chicago Principals Association. That's really cool. He manages over 1,000 principals and administrators. I've also been able to talk to people in like a director of infection control for Cook County Hospital, one of the largest hospitals in Chicago. So we have a lot of strategic partnerships across the city. And some of the cool work that we've been able to do is not only work with schools, and especially pre-COVID, they were already aware about disease prevention and how that actually takes a toll on the rates of attendance and student learning. So when it did come time for COVID to be a thing, they were already prepared. So I think that's one of the greatest successes that we've had, is that for the schools that we kind of rung the bell and said disease prevention is important, they were already set in place to have those actions in place. And then I think other cool part of that is being able to work with other places. So now we're not starting, especially with COVID, we're not looking just at schools, but we've been able to pilot like at a food beverage factory. We're looking at different company offices, like the Microsoft office downtown in Chicago. So a lot of really cool places and cool people reaching out to us. One of our advisors is the global manager of food and safety for McDonald's, who just randomly saw one of my podcasts and random things I was on and reached out to us. So it's been pretty cool.
And Ibrahim, you invented Opal back in 2017, and you talked about it a little bit. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the need for Opal is more recognized and has skyrocketed. How has life changed for your organization and the work that you're doing?
So for me personally, I love taking meetings, right? Being in person with somebody, having that infectious energy, that kind of what keeps me moving forward. But all these Zoom calls, it's kind of hard to get that energy. So we've had to move all of our entire company, just like everybody else, online. And I think that has been one of the interesting adjustments of figuring out and really solidifying that you could do work from anywhere. And I think that's been really interesting, and thinking about not only, what Opal is and how we're going to make an impact in disease prevention technology in the future, but also what does it look like to do work. My team is predominantly minorities. Our founding team, my co-founder is a Nigerian. So we have a pretty diverse background and perspective. And what we're trying to do is be able to build the future of what a good company should be, from our ethics to our standards to how we treat our employees and our partners. So even when I think this is like a good lesson for anybody working now. Your customers are not just your customers, they're also your partners. And if you can take that mindset and approach that way, they'll make introductions for you. And it's not like, oh, here, I'm selling you something. It's let me solve a problem with you. And oh, hey, do you have other problems I can solve? That's how you find new products.
And building a brand and new product takes time, patience, and persistence. And Ibrahim, what are your keys to success in innovating and building Opal, which has been massively successful?
I will say that there's no one correct path, right, to solve a problem, but I'll share my personal experience. I think it's been one, you as yourself as a leader is going to be the most important thing. It starts with you as yourself and your founding team. And so I'd say before you can lead others, you need to lead yourself. I think that has been one of the most important things in terms of leadership, is understanding how do you manage teams and how do you manage yourself. And I think that's been one of the keys, is being able to take this from an authentic perspective, especially when you get into college, and maybe you see this in high school. There's this really strange hierarchy of people who are like maybe are senior, a little bit above you, maybe even by 2 or 3 years, and they think they're an expert in something. No one's an expert until you're 40 or 50. And to be able to like kind of slash down a lot of this politics and hierarchy and being accessible, as long as you're being human, especially to your employees, it takes you a long way. So I think that's one of the key successes. I think when you talk about products and building, that is just a product, the thing you do. You need people to be able to motivate, to encourage that work. So your job as a founder or CEO is to find people who can do that work, motivate them, and share that vision of why they're doing what they're doing. So I would say that's probably the key to the success of building this, is being able to find people and having your infectious energy flow onto them so they can continue working and supporting them in everything that they do.
And I think that sort of ideology is so valuable for everyone to keep in mind. And that's something that you were able to do so well in terms of building your team and leading them so effectively. And Ibrahim, I would like to ask, what is your message for teens who are aspiring to become innovators and leaders like yourself?
So I'll say I'm about to turn 24, right? So I've been in entrepreneurship since I was about, I would say formally I was 18. So it's about 6 years. And I'll say the first thing is start as early as possible and just start doing things. Once you start failing and failing, you kind of, especially nowadays, I feel older people give advice to people who are younger. The world is entirely different, right? No one would have thought we'd be on Zoom taking virtual calls. So it's very hard. And I think that was something frustrating to me is older people giving me advice about things they didn't even know. Like they don't even know how to use their email properly. So I'll say that one of the keys to success would just be try things. Try things, fail, learn from what other people have done, but take it with a grain of salt. If your gut tells you to try something, try it. You're young enough on which that failure is not going to be the end of you, and take advantage of that youth. And being able to contact other people because you're so young, like for example, yourself, I saw that you've been able to introduce yourself to like really amazing people. And I think that goes to a credit of how many people are looking to lend that hand back to young entrepreneurs. So I would say that your job as an entrepreneur, and I don't like this word networking. I feel like networking has been tainted, but it's about building community. So your job is to build a community around yourself that's going to support you. And whatever you're doing, be it like your product you're doing now or product 5 years from now.
Ibrahim, your innovation is truly life-saving, and we cannot thank you enough for the great work that you are doing in protecting us from bugs and pandemics. And thank you so much for your time today and answering all of our questions.
Yeah, thank you so much.